Hello. I'm taking a class right now called The Foundations of Form by Pilar Lesko. And she's answering a question right now in the Q&A at the end of the class. And this person who asked the question was like, I'm turning up my feminine energy in all my centers. And it's essentially like it's not blowing on her nervous system, but it's like really big, sort of like a trance like oracle state where she is like doing really big oracle trance work essentially. And what the question is about is, how do I tap into this sort of feminine creation energy without collapsing the next day or like burning out and not having enough energy to sustain what needs to get done. So essentially, if I can explain it from my own perspective, it's the phenomenon that I've experienced where I go into essentially ceremony and I create the altar. I'm in this space. Energy is like huge, big, wild, amazing transformation, and I'm like channeling. I'm like, I'm the oracle in this state, and then the next day I don't have capacity to access that again because it was so big and it was like so high of a feeling that my body needed to recover. My form couldn't handle that state like 2 times in a row. And there are people who can. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't do this. I'm saying that each person has the capacity to enter trance-like states in that way. And this is why it's important to know that like when people who like call themselves shamans or whatever, or like do shamanic work, I think it's really important to know the consequences of entering trance states over and over and over and over again, where we're sort of like out of body, yes, very powerful and doing really incredible work in that state. However, it's not sustainable for people who are creating here in the middle world, who are engaging with the earth plane like right here with like what's right in front of us in present time. So like business, people who have to go to a job, people who have families. That's also really important. If we are always shooting ourselves into these big divine feminine oracle states, it can be difficult for us to come back and then access that kind of energy in a way that is sustainable and also beneficial to like normal life, if that makes sense. And so why I decided to put the camera on and talk about this is because I remember when I was hearing Pilar answer this question, she was talking about, lifetimes when that gift of being a channel, of being an oracle was like taken advantage of, or maybe you're forced into those states, and you weren't, entering them out of free will or in a way that was creating reciprocal return towards you. And so those gifts were taken advantage of. I was thinking about my experience playing the organ in church, and it was exactly that. It was, I didn't practice the organ like at home, and I didn't play very often. I only really like practiced at church, and I only really practiced when I needed to. And so I was going into these, I thought they were like flow states, and they kind of are in a way. where I would, be in a state of survival or urgency or fear because I didn't want to, ruin the worship service. I didn't want to be the reason why like the sacredness was lost. And so I would play and perform from that state, and I think it was propelling me into those trance-like, oracle-like states where I could play the organ very well. And it's kind of profound, actually, this realization that I'm having. And I got kind of, lit up when Pilar was talking about those gifts being taken advantage of, because it really felt like that. Like, I know it was a choice that I was making. However, it was being run off of fear. It was like, there's no one else to do this job, and so we need you to do it. But in order to get there, I would have to go into like a trance, like channeling oracle state. And I would do that every Sunday, and it would blow me out because I'd be exhausted. First of all, it wasn't even like I had time to recover afterwards. I was like still going, just completely burning all my systems out. Which is probably why like unconscious parts of myself made decisions which brought me out of that environment where I was essentially not given a choice to do that. And the choice to do that was not from a place of genuine desire to want to do it. It was, it was essentially from fear. And I just needed to express this connection that I've made, because I think it's important to remember how we got to where we are, and then also noticing when we're hearing someone speak or we're listening and there is something that's like, oh, this is like triggering me a little bit, or this is like, bringing some stuff up from my past, whether that's like in this lifetime or past or parallel lifetimes. Really like kind of getting curious about this feeling and seeing the story arc to understand why the body is responding that way. And then, express it, process it, whatever. This video right now is me like metabolizing this and just sharing and expressing what I'm finding, so that it can be, for me, it's like being outside of myself. By design, in human design, I don't have all my centers are connected to each other, so it's really easy for me to sort of like come to an understanding about something. And I can metabolize information or energy quickly by expressing it and putting it outside myself. So you get to have lots of videos of me just making connections and processing and sharing what it is that is moving through me. Whether that's through like video or writing or whatever, I'm finding all these different channels and means of expressing myself, and it feels really good. But what I want to say to close it is that when you come to these understandings of what happened to you, or these sort of patterns that you get into that are more like energy patterns versus like behavioral patterns, because this pattern that I'm talking about right now is not so much of like I did this and it did that, and so now I'm in this like loop of behavior. It's more of like my energy is going to the state, and in that state this is how it feels, and then when I'm not in that state, this is what happens. But the way that the behavior or the expression of those states, of those energetic patterns, can be different. It can be happening in different activities that you're doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, you go to the altar and you perform ceremony, and that's how you get into those energy patterns. It can just simply be like, it could be anything. It could be creating art. It could be simply like literally channeling for like your business or whatever it is, or your life. But when you can get into this really, really subtle recognition pattern, or subtle pattern recognition, subtle energy pattern recognition, I think that's, yeah, that's it. Then we can see before it's happening, while it's happening, not even like being dependent on what we're seeing outside of ourselves to know that it's happening. We come into a great skillfulness that I think we all need to have, especially those who are, whose gifts are coming online, who are becoming more sensitive. I think it's so good for us to become aware of these subtle patterns, subtle energy patterns that we are putting ourselves in. And then, you can bring in tools of past lives, of teachers like me right now, and resourcing yourself to really get clear on what is going on. So I hope that my sharing and processing, brought something up in you in a way that was helpful. And don't forget to then, ground and clear out everything that's not yours. Something that I'm being reminded of right now in this class is taking a look at the energy. What is yours? What is mine? What is society's? What is your partner's? What is your parents'? Clearing all the stuff that's not yours, simply like through a grounding cord, connected to the center of the planet. Key, so key. And if you do enjoy going into those big trance oracle channeling states, I would just do so in a way with awareness that you are doing that, and then, creating spaces for to catch yourself afterwards. Like, don't expect to run a marathon after you perform like this huge ceremony the next day. Don't expect to be able to even like socialize normally after those things, because it takes recovery. Like, we're still incarnated in these bodies, and it's so important that we also take care of them and resource them, and remember to come back into humanness, because there's so much grace and skillfulness to be learned when we learn how to work with the form of us. That is all I have to say, and I hope to make more videos like this where it's only like 10-15 minutes long, just a straight shot of something I feel I want to share. Okay, bye.